Hello, hi, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to Bookmas Day 8. I can't believe we are already on day 8. That's just so crazy to me. This has got to be the most uploads I have ever done within a month or just on this channel. So today we are going to be talking about the 26 books that I want to read for 2026. I made a 25 books for 2025, but spoiler alert, I barely read anything there. You're gonna see a mixture of books from 2025 carried over to 2026. You're gonna see some new books, some new releases. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. We have a lot of books to cover, as you can see. I'm going to move all these books out of the way, and then when we finish talking about them, we will put them here. So we're gonna begin with series and then kind of end on either the first book of the series or standalones. So let's begin with series. To no surprise, the first series I want to read for 2026 is ACOTAR, so A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm not gonna talk much about this. I also wanna go into this blind, but what I do know about the first book, which is A Court of Thorns and Roses, ACOTAR, is that it is a loose retelling of Beauty and the Beast. After the first book, it just does not follow the Beauty and the Beast storyline. And also, it's about fairies and fairies doing explicit stuff. That is all I know about this series. So I also want to go into this semi-blind, so we're just gonna end with that. I've heard so many great things about ACOTAR, but then again, I've also seen online that you're either a Sarah J. Maas fan or her writing is just not for you. And I am curious to see whether she is for me. So the first series on my 26 books for 2026 is the ACOTAR series. The second series I want to get to is an author that I've been eyeing for quite some time, and it is the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang. She wrote this book, and this is her debut novel and series, and she wrote this when she was 19, and I heard this was a masterpiece. So I'm very excited to get into this book as well, and just the series itself, and just dive into the world of R.F. Kuang. So she has written Yellowface and Babel and the most recent Catabasis, and I believe she's coming out with another book in 2026 which is called Taipei Story. So to get into R.F. Kuang's writing, I want to start with her debut novel, which is the Poppy War series. All I know about this trilogy is that it is an epic historical military fantasy, and according to Goodreads, this was inspired by the bloody history of China's 20th century. I have never read a historical novel. I've never read a war novel, and I usually don't pick up books related to war. I was kind of hesitant to pick it up, but I heard this was so good, emotionally devastating, and I want to be emotionally devastated. No, I'm kidding. And I am just curious about how I'm going to feel reading this trilogy. I only heard amazing things. I want to see what the hype is about. So I cannot wait to get to the trilogy. And I believe the second and the third book in this trilogy, oh, it's right here. And the second book is The Dragon Republic, and the final book is The Burning God. A little blurb here from Booknest. I have no doubt this will end up being the best fantasy debut of the year. I have absolutely no doubt that Kuang's name will be up there with the likes of Robin Hobb and N.K. Jemisin. So for those that have read Robin Hobb or N.K. Jemisin, maybe this might intrigue you as well if you haven't read the Poppy War yet. I'm kind of nervous to get into this, but also excited. And that is the second series in my 26 books for 2026. The next series, which is also a trilogy on my 26 books for 2026, is, to no surprise, Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I'm not going to talk about this too much. I think I've yapped about this in my previous videos. So we have Once Upon a Broken Heart, The Ballad of Never After, and A Curse for True Love. These come after the Caraval trilogy and I think the novella as well, but just the Caraval trilogy. I know I didn't want to talk too much about this, but an even quicker synopsis is that it is written kind of in a fairy tale-esque way, so that's why I'm eager to pick this up. So after I read the Caraval trilogy, I cannot wait to pick up Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. The next series also comes to no surprise, and that is the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros. I was gonna say Rebecca Ross. I'm not going to talk about this one as well. I also yapped a lot about this series in my previous videos, so it comes to no surprise that this will be in my 26 books for 2026, and it's on my winter TBR list. The last series on my 26 books for 2026 is going to be a reread, and it's a duology, and that is the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. I loved this series when I read it back in 2023, I would say, and I believe on June 30th, Leigh Bardugo is coming out with Letters to Ketterdam, which is going to be another installment for the Six of Crows duology. I believe it's a novella. So I don't know if you need to read that before or after the duology, but regardless, I do want to read the duology in anticipation for her release of Letters to Ketterdam. So we have Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I absolutely love this duology, highly recommend it for those that like a heist and found family trope. Okay, we're breezing through this really quickly. So now we're gonna go on to either the first book in a series or standalones. So the first standalone on my 26 books for 2026 is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I did not get to read this book in 2025, so it got carried over to 2026, and also in anticipation for the second book in this, I think, interconnected standalone series. I don't remember, I think it's When We Met, The Night We Met. This is the first in that interconnected standalone series. I'm assuming it's going to be an interconnected standalone, or if it's a series, I'm not too sure yet. But I do want to get to this book. I wanted to read this in the summer, but didn't get to it, and I just didn't feel like picking it up. But now, since the second in this installment is coming out, I believe in March, I do want to read this as soon as I can so that I can read the second book in this interconnected standalone series. I was going to go into this blind, but I'm going to read the back of the book. There might be no such thing as a perfect guy, but Xavier Rush comes disastrously close. A gorgeous veterinarian giving Greek god vibes, all while cuddling a tiny kitten? Immediately, yes. That is until Xavier opens his mouth and proves that even sculpted gods can say the absolute wrong thing. Of course, there's nothing Samantha loves more than proving an asshole wrong. Unless, of course, he can admit he made a mistake. But after one incredible and seemingly endless date, possibly the best in living history, Samantha is forced to admit the truth, that her family is in crisis and any kind of relationship would be impossible. Samantha begs Xavier to forget her, to remember their night together as a perfect moment, as crushing as that may be. Only no amount of distance or time is nearly enough to forget that something between them. And the only thing better than one single perfect memory is to make a life, and even a love, worth remembering. I love Abby Jimenez's writing. I love all of her books so far that I've read. And for this one, what I noticed is that usually her blurbs at the back of the book does not like, it only tells you the surface level of the book. I mean, I guess that's all books, right? If you were to read the back of Abby Jimenez's books, you would think this is a cute little romance novel, but it packs a lot of things. There's just so much depth in her books. So I do know our female main character's mother has dementia. That is one of the reasons why I have pushed this off and potentially not read it, because I feel like it's going to be so devastating to read, and I don't know, I wasn't ready for it. One of my close friends did read this, and she does think that I can read this book. So it's not as bad as I think it may be. So maybe I am just overthinking it. So that is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. So the next book on my 26 books for 2026 is by Ash, Oak, and Thorn by Melissa Harrison. Every time I pick up this book and talk about it, I always have to comment about the cover of this book. The artwork is beautiful. It is stunning. I love it. I believe this is a children's book, and I think it is a duology. but I could be wrong. I think this is going to be perfect for spring, and it is short enough to finish, so I want to get to this book. I saw this book on Aya's Cottage here on YouTube, and just hearing her talk about this book made me want to pick it up. So that's why I want to read this in 2026 springtime. So on the back of the book, three little people wake from their winter sleep in an old ash tree. Moss, Burnet, and Cumulus usually love spring, but their joy turns to worry when they discover that Cumulus is starting to fade away. The trio set off in search of answers, only to discover that they must travel far beyond the countryside to a loud, busy, and danger-filled place called the Hive. So that's all we know about this book. So I think this is pretty cute with a hint of mystery. So I'm excited to get to this book come spring 2026. The next book I want to read in 2026 is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I wanted to read this for 2 years now, and I've been pushing it off for 2 years. Ever since I watched Haley Pham's video on Better Than the Movies, I've wanted to pick it up. So I believe this is one of her favorite books and one of her favorite authors, and I wanted to see for myself if I would also enjoy this book. Let's see what this is about. Liz Buxbaum has always known that Wes Bennett was not boyfriend material. You would think that her next-door neighbor would be a prime candidate for her romantic comedy fantasies, but Wes has only proven himself to be a pain in the butt ever since they were little. Wes was the kid who put a frog in her Barbie dream house, the monster who hid a lawn gnome's severed head in her little homemade neighborhood book exchange. Flash forward 10 years from the great gnome decapitation. It's Liz's senior year, a time meant to be rife with milestones, perfect for any big screen, and she needs Wes's help. See, Liz's forever crush, Michael, has just moved back to town, and horribly annoyingly, he's hitting it off with Wes. Meaning that if Liz wants Michael to finally notice her and hopefully be her prom date, she needs Wes. He's her in. But as Liz and Wes scheme to get Liz her magical prom moment, she's shocked to discover that she actually likes being around Wes. And as they continue to grow closer, she must re-examine everything she thought she knew about love and rethink her own perception of what happily ever after should really look like. How cute! I heard this would be really great to read during prom season, so sometime in June. So I'm thinking of reading this sometime in June. I'm trying to recall Haley Pham's video and whether she recommends going into this blind or not. So now that I read the back of the book, I mean, I can't really go into it blind. But to be honest, I probably will forget about what this book is about and then kind of semi go into it blind. That is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. The next book on the list is a first book in a duology, and to no surprise, it is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is on my winter TBR, so I'm hopeful that I will get to this in 2026. I also read the synopsis of this book in my winter TBR video. So pretty much this is an enemies to lovers fantasy, and they're writing letters to each other, and I believe they're both writers. So that is Divine Rivals, and is also going to be on my 26 books for 2026. So the next book I don't have a physical copy of, but I do want to get to in 2026, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So this book was very popular, I believe, in 2022, and I have heard mixed reviews about it, so I pushed off reading it. But 2026 is the time. Having the hype died down a bit, even though it's still very popular throughout the years. So I'm curious to see where I land in this debate of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So I believe this book is about our female main character who bargains to live forever. And the consequence to that is that no one's going to remember her. So it sounds like, and then we kind of see her life along the way. I think that's what it's about. I mean, I guess that's what it's about. The title is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Pretty much she bargains her life so that she can live forever, but the consequence is that she will not be remembered by anyone. I vaguely remember that because of this curse, no one's going to remember her, but somehow, while we're reading her story, there is someone that remembers her. I think that's the mystery. But anyway, that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab that I want to get to in 2026. The next book is not a surprise as well, because I believe it's also on my winter TBR. and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I also read the synopsis of this, I believe, in my winter TBR video, so I'm not going to read the synopsis again. But the reason why I want to get to this is that it's about time that I read this, because this was on my physical TBR for quite some time, and it's been on my Goodreads list since I started on Goodreads. So it's about time. It's about time to read this book. And the reason why I'm picking this up in 2026 is because I want to read Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. They don't have any correlation, but because of the release of Atmosphere, I just wanted to pick up The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo too. So that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo on my 26 books for 2026. So the next book I also don't have a physical copy of, but I'm thinking of buying it in 2026. And that is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I absolutely loved One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. By then, I already knew Rachel Gillig is the author for me. So I wanted to read The Night and the Moth, which came out in 2025. And in 2026, the second book, and I think the last book, and I think it's a duology. So the second and last book of The Night and the Moth duology is coming out September 1st, I believe. And so in anticipation for that, I do want to read The Night and the Moth, but also because I just want to read more Rachel Gillig books. So I don't know what this book is about, and I do want to go into it blind. So I'm not going to talk about what the book is about, but just to know that I am very excited to read The Night and the Moth because Rachel Gillig is slowly becoming one of my favorite authors. So that is a book that I'm looking forward to in 2026. The next book is also a book that I don't own, but because I very recently read a book from this author, I want to read this book because the second book is also coming out. So the book that I'm talking about is First Time Caller by B.K. Borson. If you've seen my last Bookmas video, I recently read Good Spirits by B.K. Borson, and I really enjoyed it. So I heard pretty good things about First Time Caller. If anything, I've heard great things about it. And the second book is coming out, I think, in February. So in anticipation for the second book, I do want to read the first book. So the first book being First Time Caller, and then the second book is, I believe it's called And Now Back to You. And the covers are so cute, so I do want to pick up First Time Caller. I have no idea what it's about, but I do want to go into that one blind too, so I'm not going to really chat about what it's about. But that is another book that I am looking forward to in 2026. We have two more books. We're almost there. The next book I'm super excited to read, and I really want to get to in 2026. It's a new to me genre, and also a recommendation by my eldest sister, and that is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Maybe I should hold it like that again. My eldest sister recommended this book to me as a great beginner book into sci-fi. So I'm very excited to read this, and it's going to be a new to me genre. So 2026 is going to be a new to me genre moment. I think I have other things that are new here. Maybe not. But anyway, 2026 is going to be the start of my sci-fi era, maybe, we'll see. And to start, it's going to be Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. So I'm excited to read this. I have no idea what it's about, and I want to keep it that way. So that is Dark Matter. And the last book on my 26 books for 2026 is Finlay Donovan is Killing It by El Cosimano. I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. I heard pretty good things about this book. I believe it's a murder story, but make it funny, I think. But let's read the back of the book to find out. Finlay Donovan is killing it, except she's really not. As a stressed out single mom of two and a struggling novelist, Finlay finds her life in chaos. When Finlay is overheard discussing the plot of her new suspense novel with her agent over lunch, she's mistaken for a contract killer and inadvertently accepts an offer to dispose of a problem husband. Finlay soon discovers that crime in real life is a lot more difficult than its fictional counterpart as she becomes tangled in a murder investigation. Fast-paced, deliciously witty, and wholeheartedly authentic in depicting the frustrations and triumphs of motherhood, Finlay Donovan is Killing It is the first in a brilliant new series from award-winning author El Cosimano. Oh, I did know that this is a series, but I only have the first book. But I only heard people talk about the first book and haven't heard people talk about the others in the series. So I'll see if I like this book, and if I do, whether I'm satisfied with the ending of this book, and if it's going to be something that I want to continue in a series or be satisfied with the first book. And that is all the books on my 26 books for 2026. Let me know if you make a 26 books for 2026, or if you have any books that you want to read in 2026. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Bookmas video, and I will see you in Bookmas Day 9. Bye.